My main instrument has always been a Hammond B3 organ. I think I'm one of the few guys that still lugs one of these things around, but these are the classic rock and roll organ that's been around since blues, been around since like the 40s or the 50s or something. This is actually a Hammond XB3 because it's been completely digitalized. And there used to be a very complicated, bulky mechanism inside for making the sounds, and this has recreated it all. It's the classic organ sound that you hear, and I've been using it 30 years since the band started, and I refuse to give up on it.
How old were you when you first started to play?
Because now I'm only 35.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, I was like playing the trumpet from like 4th grade. As I started on violin, and after 2 days they said, "Why don't you try the trumpet?" So to this day, I'd love to be able to play the violin.
Are you scarred now that you won't try it anymore?
Yeah. Well, see, I got back at him because I can play violin sounds on a synth now. I was playing trumpet all through high school. I was in the marching band at the football games, and then probably halfway through high school, when the Beatles hit America, I just started working up Beatles songs by ear on the old beat-up piano in my parents' basement, and from that I kind of taught myself to play the piano. And then when I got away to college, I just happened to be assigned to the same dormitory as Alan Gratzer, our original drummer, and he was in a band and their keyboard player was leaving, and I said, well, I can kind of play the keyboards, and they just all left that group, and everybody in that old band he was with joined up with me, and that was the first REO Speedwagon.
Now, speaking of that, how did you come up with the name REO Speedwagon?
Well, I was in college at the time, ostensibly studying to be an electrical engineer, and we were in a history of transportation class, and the very day the band started looking for a name, I walked in there and REO Speedwagon was written across the whole front of the room, and he goes, this was an old truck that was a milestone in transportation because it was the first heavy-duty, high-speed vehicle. But before that, a truck could either be fast or it could carry something heavy. And like a fire engine, any truck sturdy enough to be a fire engine, by the time it got to the fire, it was too late. So the Speedwagon was outfitted as a fire truck some of the time for that reason. REO stands for Ransom Eli Olds, the man who later developed the Oldsmobile, and before he did that, he had the REO motor car company, and the Speedwagon was his first major accomplishment. And you know, it was back in the 20s or something, and when I was in college, you know, which was this truck had been around for 50 years or something, and it was still being talked about. So we thought, high speed, heavy duty, you know, that's rock and roll. So everybody liked the name immediately, so it was destiny.
What gives your group longevity in this business?
Well, I think part of it is just the type of music that we first became popular with is just the type of music that doesn't really have a particular age group. It just appeals to everybody. It's like our brains are wired for certain things to sound pleasing, just the same way that classical music, you know, Beethoven, those guys who were the rock stars of their day, people still listen to that. And it's just, you know, we're all for music changing and for younger generations getting their own sound and trying anything as crazy as they want. But just this whole classic rock and power ballad thing, people just never got tired of it. And also, I mean, also we just refused to give up. You know, no matter what we were doing, you know, we'd still be wanting to go out there and do it because you don't ever get that out of your blood. Playing in front of a live audience is the biggest thrill on earth.
And you tour every year.
Oh yeah.
And they enjoy each other, and I think that's a lot of it too, is that you guys get along real well and you write together.
That's very important. One good thing is that back in 1981, when we had that huge record, High Infidelity, we'd already been together for 10 years. Because a really, really big hit can break up a band because all of a sudden, you know, the front men are getting more attention than the rest of the guys and ego things start happening. And sometimes a big hit can be the worst thing that happens to a band, because the little demons and jealousies and stuff can come out and destroy the whole thing. And fortunately, we'd been together 10 years when that happened, so we had developed a very solid friendship, and we'd gotten that stuff out of our heads about, well, we all want to be the most famous guy on stage, you know. And so I'm glad that it took us that long before something like that happened to us, because that's got a lot to do with why we're still around, because when the success hit, we were mature enough to handle it.
If you could change something in the schools, what would you change? What do you think would make the school more interesting?
Other than giving kids more of these kind of things to play around with, because these synthesizers can do anything, and I would imagine there's some kid out there that could make this do something I would never think of. But I think music, a formal training in music is important. I'm glad that I had my trumpet lessons. Gave me a basic understanding of music theory, and although I taught myself keyboard, if I had it to do over, I might take piano lessons and learn the classical stuff, because the best piano players like Elton John and Billy Joel, the best rock piano players, they have a classical background. You know, one interesting thing, this is a Leslie speaker. I don't know if you get back, take this up, you can see inside of it. And there's two speakers in there, an upper and a lower, and they're spinning in opposite directions and at different speeds. And that's that classic. A lot of the classic sound of an organ is because of the rotating speakers in those Leslie cabinets. And this is the synthesizer, of course. And like a lot of the newer synths today, basically just have audio samples stored inside of them. But this actually goes back to the way the original old analog synthesizers worked. It's actually a computer model of the old original analog. Most of the stuff we used synthesizer on was stuff we were doing back in the 70s, and this gets those classic 70s analog synthesizer sounds, so that's why I use that. One of the few synths today that has a nice knob and a slider and everything for every single function inside of it, so you can program it while you're playing it. You can change the sound in a lot of different subtle ways while you're actually during the performance. So that's why I like this one.
And what songs do you use this?
The little display right there says "Lightning" right now. That's a song we were working on yesterday, a song we haven't done in a long time.
Good for you guys.
That beautiful rotating speakers.
That's awesome.
And see, that's in there. Here's probably this is from Riding the Storm Out, that big thing at the... Probably heard that on classic rock radio.
Yeah.
That's why I'm using that.
Wow.
And you know what? This guy right here, before I met him, I actually owned a house. He makes me spend so much money on equipment that I had to sell my house. Dave talked me back into going all classic, the real thing type.
Well, what would you bring on stage if you weren't using what you used in the
Well,
recording studio?
for a while there in the 80s, I had a thing about this size was my only keyboard instrument on stage.
Really?
And through, you've probably heard of the MIDI interface, musical instrument digital interface. It's a way to play one synthesizer module from a remote keyboard. It's just sending out little computer commands so that I could be playing something here and it could actually be triggering sounds on racks full of equipment that are off stage. So some of our touring during the 80s, when we had a very kind of graphic looking set and a real clean look, I had a keyboard about this size, and underneath the stage was like the insides of a B-52